So today we're going to do SAC Basics, and this is just the nuts and bolts of school advisory councils. Now, SAC is different than other school organizations. PTA has a great role in schools and is instrumental in so many different ways, but they're not required by law. SAC is the one thing that is required by state statutes. So it's really unusual, the role that we play, especially as volunteers. The legislators decided that this was the way to help students do better in school. So with that, I'll start. Let's see, next one. So with the SAC Basics, we're going to talk about what SAC is, what our responsibilities are. We're going to talk about meetings. We're going to talk about records, resources, and then questions and answers. And you're going, oh my gosh, records, meetings. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that because, as I said, this is an unusual type of committee because we're not driven by law. We are directed by law is a better way to say it. So we're a diverse group of stakeholders. The legislature designed us to be not just, the typical thing of how you're going to make your school better, where you put in your assistant principals and your principals, your administrators, but we're going to look at the stakeholders. We're going to look at parents and teachers and staff members and the students and community members. And we're going to look more than just those different groups. We're going to also make sure that our SAC resembles what our school is in socioeconomics or in ethnicities. So it's a challenging way to form a SAC. So what is our goal? It is to increase student achievement. And of course, in a safe learning environment. If it's not a safe and learning environment, the kids aren't going to learn as well, or the teachers aren't going to be comfortable coming into school if they feel threatened. So, it is about the safety and then increasing that student achievement. So let's see here. Okay, so if we look at the law, and I have up here state statutes 101.452, and this PowerPoint's going to be on the website too. And if you click on it, you're going to go right to the state site with the law, because again, we were made through law. First thing, if you go through and you read it, a majority of the school council's members must not be employed by the district. So what happened years ago, and I actually started with a school advisory council back in probably 87. Yeah, that long ago. And I was in Broward County, and they modeled a lot of this off of Broward County. And as the law was made, it went through several revisions. And the revisions were kind of like, me telling my child to go brush their teeth. And then they come back and they say, I brushed my teeth. And you say, did you use toothpaste? No. Go back and brush your teeth and use toothpaste. And they come back and you go, did you rinse your mouth? No, we'll go back. So the law was then tweaked over several years. And what was happening was they were putting, with the school advisory council members, they were putting in their friends from other schools. And we were not getting that diversity that needed, because if you have a SAC that is, I call it a stacked SAC, say that several times, what happens is you're not going to get the flow of information because people are not going to be willing to talk. They're going to feel threatened, no matter what the group is. If you had a lot of administrators, the teachers might not want to talk, or the staff members, or the students. So this was one of the key changes that started initially. And then it goes on to say that it's composed of the principal. It doesn't say assistant principal, it says the principal. An appropriately balanced number of teachers, education support employees, students, parents, other business and community citizens. And that's a representative of the ethnic, racial, and economic community served by the schools. Technical centers and high schools have to include students. Middle and junior high may include. And if they're in VOTEC, they don't have to have parents. So if you go through the law, it'll change a little bit depending on what level of school you're in or who's going to be on there. Now, initially, schools here in Pinellas were stacking their SAC with elementary students because they could get the balance, ethnicity and socioeconomics, but they had a bunch of kids in there. I had one where there was 18, and I spoke up at a school board meeting and I said, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what the law says. And they stopped it and they put it on hold. Again, you know, we're supposed to be working with the law, not looking for loopholes. So middle and junior may include students. And then the next component is that we're all elected from our peer groups in a fair way. So teachers are going to vote for teachers, support going to vote for support, parents from parents, and students. So when you're talking about middle and junior, you know, that could be kind of, you know, how are we going to do an election? And you have to decide if the school has the resources. And I don't mean money, I mean people that are willing to work with the kids to figure out that election. And then, of course, the SAC must represent ethnic, racial, and economic makeup of the community served by the schools. And if they can't, that's when you get to appointed members. So the school board can appoint members. I've had a couple of schools where they appointed members and they were great members. And it's not a case of, you know, they're picking the wrong person for it. The people have to have an interest in it. So it worked very well. And they have to have this to have that balance. So what's the definition and clarification? Because we're talking about teachers and education support employees. And initially what we saw was they were saying, well, we're putting our AP in as a teacher. And it was like, no, this is also part of the law, that it is defined in the law, and that state statutes 1012.01. So it is for staff, for example. It's not instructional, it's not administrative personnel pursuant to the statute and whose duties require 20 or more hours each in a normal working week. All right, so now we have our SAC, and what are we supposed to be doing? What did the legislatures want us to do? Well, they wanted us to increase the student performance, but they had to do it, they had to figure out a way that we would detail that, and that's called the school improvement. So it starts off with the law at the top. It's the sole body responsible for final decision-making at the school relating to the implementation of school improvement. We decide how school improvement funds are spent. We jointly decide with the school faculty how A+ recognition funds are spent, except after February 1st. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. We assist in the preparation and evaluation of the school improvement plan, and we assist the principal with the school budget. And then we also perform functions as prescribed by the regulations of the school board. So this is all detailed in the law. Now, we're going to talk a little bit later about bylaws, and what we need to look at is in number 4 and 5 here, assists. And that's, you know, what does that mean? Because it means something different in each school. In some schools, they actively work a school improvement plan, which is, I think, what the legislature intended, where you go through during the year and you're looking at your different portions of the school improvement plan, seeing if it works. What are the data show? Is, you know, do we need to tweak it? So that would be, you know, assisting. Some schools with the school budget, nobody even talks about it. But that's where you have to really detail in your bylaws. What does assist mean? Does it mean just the principal saying, yeah, you know, I just did the school budget, you know, come to a meeting if you want to? Or is it something where it's explained? Now, I think it's really important, especially the school improvement with SACs, that these things be talked about. We're not just a vehicle for the school improvement plan, but we're also a vehicle to the community, so that when we're looking at a penny tax and you have people that say, hey, you know, they get plenty of money, they're wasting money, we become the advocates and we go, hey, no, that's not quite true. So, for example, in our county, when it came years ago to an increase, I was able to say, well, wait a minute. We have a science department, and this was high school science department, and we had 2,000 plus students at our high school, and they're going to share in roughly $1,000 in material budget. How are they going to buy their equipment? You know, their chemicals for doing the tests, you know, frogs, if they're dissecting the frogs, etc. So once we become knowledgeable of how the schools, what the schools actually work with, what their budgets are, we have a better understanding, and we become that advocate, so to speak, to the community. So, school improvement plan, what is it? It's made up of goals and objectives established by the school, determined by needs. Of course, number 1 is to increase student performance, but what we have to include is strategies, safety, discipline, health, fitness, resources, human and material, and measured goals. I kind of slipped over the strategies, quick little cute thing. So I'm taking my precocious, what was he in kindergarten? Okay, to school. And he was a pain in the neck. He was a hellfire. So I pick him up for schools, and he goes, "Hey, Nini, she's my teacher. She teaches me tragedies." And I'm thinking, he's learning Shakespeare. This is pretty cool. Tragedies. I said, "What?" And he says, "You know, tragedies." And it was like she was teaching him strategies to calm down. So whenever I see the word strategies, I laugh because he was so funny. I love kids. Okay, we also, our plans, back to the school improvement plan. It includes funds for implementation. How are we going to do this plan? Sometimes it doesn't cost anything, but sometimes it does. So we're given funds to help each school for use in their implementing the school improvement plan. So we'll talk about the funds in another slide. Step 1, we determine the needs through surveys, discussions with the teachers, with the community. You're going to look at your prior year's school improvement plan. You're going to look at data or reports to see how to measure your progress, and you're going to use testing scores. We all love that. And then the last bullet here is just where you can access your school improvement plans, because now I believe all the schools do it through online, through the Office of CIMS, through DOE. So we're going to talk about funding. We all want this tree of our money tree in the backyard. I know I do. All right. What do we talk about with school improvement resources? And I'm talking outside of human resources. We're going to get school improvement funds. We can use recognition funds, which is called the A+ money or reward money. I've heard a lot of different terms for it. The school budget. You can use other resources, grants, PTA can pitch in, business and community partnerships. And sometimes I'm asked, can we do fundraisers? And it's not recommended because the school improvement allocations have to be separate and auditable. We do get audited. You have a auditor general come in, and he'll take a handful of schools from a district, and he goes through to see if the money matches up to what it's supposed to be. And that also goes, later on, we're going to talk about minutes, because that's another component of it. Now, the PTA is pretty cool, because when I was actively working with the the SAC, we would sometimes trade off things. So we could use our school improvement funds, for example, copy costs or things like that. We couldn't use it for something that was more of a capital expenditure. Books would be a capital expenditure, believe it or not. And you know, I don't see that. I'm thinking 5-year life to a book is perfect, but that is considered a capital expenditure. So you can see PTA may say, okay, well, we can pay for that and you pay for this. So we can kind of work together with that if we can't, if we have things that we believe that are needed for our schools that fall outside our school improvement funds. All right, so the funds is actually given to us or directed through the statutes 1001.452. We get a portion of the funds from the General Appropriations Act for use by SAC to be used for implementing the school improvement plan. That's all it says. But then you have to go into your general appropriations to find out what that amount is, and it changes every year. Initially, it was $10. Now it's $5 per student. In some years, it was nothing. And in those cases, some of the districts gave each, did, $3 per student or $2 per student, but they gave something for SAC for the school improvement plan. The allocation of revenues and expenditures, it's through the state lotteries. So the way it's engineered is, if you start reading through, they take the lottery funds, and the first thing that they pull from that is the reward money. So any school that has that A+ money of 100, and they get $100 per student, that's pulled right off the top. And then if there's money left over, then you get, that $5 or whatever it is per year, according to that General Appropriations Act. I don't really like that scenario, because we still need those funds, especially schools that are struggling to implement their school improvement plan. It's kind of a feast and famine, and I understand their thinking. I just would have liked to see it a little bit. I would have liked to see it backwards, where we would be definitely granted $10 per student for our school improvement plan, and then you take the left of the other funds, and you go, okay, it's going to go anywhere from $80 to $100 per student. However, anyway. So we go into the allocation of revenues and expenditures of funds for public education. One, it's not subject to override by the principal or school district staff, but it has to be subject to audit. So where we say it's not subject to override, it can be something where the district will say, no, you can't use it for that because that is a capital expenditure, for example. And then, so yes, it would be overridden at that point, but you kind of get the thought process here. It's what the council decides. It's not to be used for capital improvements or projects over a year. However, a SAC can determine year to year to continue it on. These monies can only be expended on programs or projects selected by SAC. And that amount is determined annually by the General Appropriations Act. And that's a real hard one to look for too on the My Florida House Gov, because you're going to have bills from the Senate and bills from the House, and you have to look for the right one. It's a pain in the neck. It should be like right up at the top, you know, click here, but it isn't. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the school recognition funds. That's that A+ money, which is different. You get the money if your school goes up a grade, and then you'll get that $100 per student reward. Now, this is jointly decided by faculty and SAC. It can be used for bonuses for faculty and staff. That was number one, and I'm reading this the way the law was designed. So if you're an English school teacher and you want the kids to read a paragraph and determine what the author was thinking, that's where this comes into play. There's that kind of a thinking. So you always put your top priority first and go from there. So number one, it starts right off for non-reoccurring bonuses to the faculty and staff. 2, it could be used for non-reoccurring expenditures for educational equipment or materials. It could be used for temporary personnel to assist the school in maintaining or improving student performance. And school improvement funds can be used for that too. The thing when you're going with personnel, temporary personnel, there's a lot more cost than just that per hour, because you've got your FICA taxes on that. And if they're employed for a certain amount of time and then you're not going to use them, now you have unemployment. So it isn't a cut and dry type, this is all we're going to spend for this year, because it could be residual in subsequent years if you're not going to utilize that personnel. Now, if you don't reach a decision by February 1st, the funds are dispersed as bonuses to the classroom teachers currently teaching in the school year. That's it. So if you have a student that, worked with her class and they did fantastic, I mean, they just went over and above the call of duty, but she retires or she's sick or he's sick, they wouldn't get it. Your support, they wouldn't get it. Your administrators, they wouldn't get it. I've seen the recognition funds really almost destroy a school, because you come to this feeling where people don't feel as valued. And I've been in meetings where I saw it occurred, and I just kept my mouth shut because I was, I'm just a parent, a SAC parent. But to see how it came about was it was sad. It really was sad. So after that, I turned around from my experience and said, I said to our SAC, I said, we really need a plan. If we're going to get it, let's get a plan of action, how we want to do it. Now, you're not going to just say, we want the funds and that's it, or we want 50%, because after February 1st, it's a done deal. But we want to work with what's the best. So at that point, when we had gotten it at our school, it was, we want to see this shared throughout the staff, because if you don't have the janitors, you're not going to have no janitors come, who's going to want to, they have an important role, or your cafeteria workers. So this is something that really has to be thought of, because if you have an idea, if you know you're going to get money, and then there's talk about that you're going to get less, you feel like someone's taking it away. So if you're proactive and you think before all this happens, you can have maybe you have a little bit more listening ears, or the ability to work outside your own needs. I know I can spend my money before I get it. And yeah, comes tax time and you're going, oh boy, I'm gonna have to pay. And it's like a relief. I don't have to pay. That's human nature. So SAC requirements. We're back to State Statutes 1001.452. Okay, we need to adopt bylaws to establish the procedures. Again, this is all very finely crafted through state statutes. And it occurred because as they set up things, they had so many issues that they had to get more precise and detailed in the law. So they said, okay, we're going to need bylaws. That wasn't initially what they started off with. And that was that bylaws, we need 3 days advance notice in writing to all SAC members that anything is any matter coming before SAC to be voted on. You need a quorum of at least 51% to be present before a vote can be taken by school advisory councils. The quorum must be present for each voting issue. So you could start off with a quorum at a meeting, and let's say halfway through, Susie Q has to leave. She's got a meeting. Now you don't have a quorum. You can't have any more votes. It's done because she was that portion. You can have someone that's attending, like say through a Zoom, but you have to have 51% that are present, not counting that person that's participating remotely. Where you're going to schedule meetings when parents, students, and teachers, business members, and community can attend. A lot of times they were having these meetings prior to school, and it worked well for the teachers and the staff, but you couldn't get parents because if they were working, they had to go to work, or the community. So this was, again, another way that they said, hey, we need to get this. This is not the way we wanted SAC to be. It's like me going back to my kid and saying, okay, go back and use toothpaste. Go back and wash your mouth out. It was that type of reaction how the state statute changed over the years. It also calls for those bylaws to have a way of replacing a member that was absent for 2 unexcused consecutive absences. So that is also because you could have, say, a person that's put there and they don't come to any meetings. You can't have a quorum. They're hurting the quorum. You don't have that participation from them. You need to, move on, put somebody else in. We have to have procedures for recording of minutes, of meeting minutes. The bylaws include name of council, and it has to have school advisory council in the name, with the policies, the purposes, the governance. It needs to detail your duties and obligations. You need to talk about the school improvement and the recognition, the school improvement plan. Here's where you would put in the school budget. How does the SAC assist the principal? And it could be, in the bylaws that you assist the principal in whenever he does his budget. What is it, May maybe, or whatever. But detail it then, and then there's no confusion. There's no hard feelings because it's all right there. And again, you want to add subject to all open government laws. We are all volunteer, but because we were established by state statutes, we are under penalty. We have to obey sunshine law. So you can think of your SAC almost like a mini school board. We have to do the same things as a school board. And sometimes that's easier to think of, so that you go, well, can I do this? Can I talk to this person? And you have to think of, well, how would you feel if your school board did it? And that kind of helps you. You might have a better understanding that way. Your bylaws will also include member composition, officers, the meetings. You're going to include election processes. I shouldn't have to I should be able to go into any school in Florida and say, I want to see your school advisory council bylaws, and know that elections are in August, or elections are in May, or elections, they do, half the members one year, half the members the next, however they do it. How the procedure for appointing members. So in our SAC, we had where we can nominate, the SAC members could nominate, say, another parent. It didn't have to be the principal. It didn't have to be the school board. You could have a neighbor, that may be interested in it. You have to have that procedure for removal of SAC member for just cause, that missing the 2 meetings. And how's the procedure for replacing those members that were removed? Now, the next portion is on our minutes. Because we are required by state statutes, we have to abide by sunshine laws, we have to have minutes. And they're really a good thing. They're verification of proper procedures. So for one of the schools, before we would decide on spending X amount of money at a SAC meeting for school improvement, and once the bookkeeper got the minutes, then she would release the funds. So that was that one school. Your minutes are also your verification of who's there, your attendance. So you can figure out who's missed two meetings in a row. And it could, your bylaws could say, two consecutive meetings or 3 in total. So it's open that way. It's gonna record that you have a quorum. As I said, it's going to record your school improvement fund expenditure decisions, motion to expend $1,000 on whatever. It's documentation of decision of business required by law for the public. So it's public records, and it's open to the public. It accelerates business, and it helps proceeding officers and members. So if I was going into a school for one of my grandkids, for example, and I would want to look at their bylaws, and then I would want to look at their minutes, not to look at what they're doing wrong, but get a kind of an idea of how active the SAC is, if I fit. I shouldn't have to go and ask anybody for the information. It's supposed to be right there. And, even with that, I've been into, just recently, 2 years ago, I went into the elementary school of my granddaughter, and I said, where's your SAC binder? Where's your for your minutes? Well, we don't know. So I went in a few weeks later, find out. I went in, and well, it's with the principal. You have to wait and talk to the principal. It's like, no, that's not the way it's supposed to. Already, then I got this feeling, okay, what the heck are they hiding? Because it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be difficult. The minutes include the kind of meeting, the date, time, place, attendance, the determination of a quorum, call to order, presiding officer, approval of the minutes, agenda, motions and votes, any correspondence, the next meeting. Now the minutes, we don't really have training for minutes, and normally you'll get either a staff member or a parent that will do your minutes. My best training was going to a they had here in Pinellas a fall kind of a training thing where all the PTA, you had to attend this in order to be able to use the PTA insurance. And so they had a component which was PTA minutes, and that was excellent. I learned so much there because, again, this information is just not, provided. Now on the website, on my website, I have a sample of minutes and agenda, and the DOE saw mine and they took mine and then they amended it a little bit. And how do I know that? Because of the properties of the document, it still has my name. So it was like, you think they could have said, hey, this was from me. I just left it. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. I guess it is if I'm still, belly aching about it. But okay, SAC in the sunshine. What does that mean? We have reasonable notice. Meetings must be open to the public. Otherwise, the decisions are not binding. Public location, recorded minutes, public inspection, and open recorded voting. No secret ballots. Now, you could have ballots for election, but after that, you can't. It's all open. It's government in the sunshine. So in plain English, public advertising the meeting. How are you going to do that? You're going to put it on the marquee, a public meeting place, accessible to the public, welcoming to the public participation, auditable to the public, minutes taken. You have a quorum, you need minutes, bylaws. The public may videotape or record meetings. And even just two members discussing SAC must be in the sunshine. So if you have where two members are coming together, even for the agenda, that could be a stretch because you can't be discussing what's going to be coming forward to the SAC for a vote prior to a meeting. Again, you go and say, well, I'm not sure, can I talk about this? And I'm not quite sure. Just think of how your school board conducts business because they've got an attorney. So usually they're pretty much on track. Now, with this, I'm going to say I have seen some school advisory council meetings that were absolutely horrible. That's all I can say is horrible. I went to one and the person I went with, she has a vision problem. She's legally blind, and she had a hearing. She had severe hearing issues. And they put this in the teacher's lounge, and there was the copier. She couldn't hear anything, and they were like tough luck. They were just, they were not nice. And they did far more than that. They had students at the meeting. It was middle school. And then they wanted to vote her off, and they actually turned to the kid and asked her for her vote. And she's sitting right next to the principal. That was, I pretty much threw up my hands at that point, and I'm not a big fan of Pinellas County. If we get a new superintendent, it may be better. But I spoke to him about it, and he didn't have any issue with it. And to me, it was like, I'll leave it at that. You can see I was a little passionate about that. So what are our resources? And actually, this is wrong here. I'm gonna have to go back and fix it. It's just, you can do florida-family.net. I also own flfamilies.com, but if you put in this /SAC, it's not going to work. So I'm going to change that. I'll put up the amended PowerPoint on the website, and I'll have the correct, I'll have 2 URLs for that. Your Florida state law, Florida school board, school improvement plans, Attorney General, and the Red Book. The big thing, if you have a problem with your SAC or someone calls you, it's all right, what does your school district have in its policies? Because actually the school board is supposed to establish the election procedures. And a lot of times they just go and they say, well, you guys, it's up to the schools. They just pass it off. And you can say, well, that's good because we can do what we want, what we think is best for our school. But what I see happening is that the schools flounder because they're not sure what to do. And if you're talking about, say, elections, it can be really complicated because that would be a human resource. How are you going to put out the ballots? You know, who's going to take them in, et cetera. And then the next thing, if you're having questions with your SAC, is looking at that individual school SAC bylaws. And that's where I say, if I'm going into a school, you know, my daughter is down in Miami-Dade, I could go and ask for that school's bylaws and know how I can participate, when the elections are. And as far as community members, again, how do you have an election with community members? So that's bylaws is really important. That could be one of the appointees. I don't know. So, questions?
I have a few questions.
Sure.
Okay, first of all, is it possible to get a copy of that last page just shared either in the chat or in the email so I can share it with everybody quickly? That was really helpful, that last page.
Okay, this one here?
Yes, please. It would be so nice to have that.
And
I'll fix that top thing. Or did you say this is available on the website?
Yes. So why don't I escape here real quick, and because I might be able to help you through the site. So if you went to floridafamily.net, and you can see I'm going to type in flfamilies.com, you're going to go to the same because I own both. And you would click either here or here or here or here, but all of them take you to the same page, which is initially the Sac Basics. From here, that's where you're going to get a lot of your links. So if we go to Sac Basics and Tools, the home page is what is Sac Basic Training. This is where you're going to pick up your PowerPoint and your training handout. So for this, I did a three slide so that you could write on the right for the handout.
That's great.
If we go to the files, and I tried to put things that I thought were being most of help to the top of the drop-down menu, we have school acronyms and definitions. You know, if you're having a hard time getting people into your SAC, if they don't understand what you're talking about, they're just not going to come. And nobody will ask what that means. So, you know, if we can not talk in acronyms if possible, or at least preface each acronym with, you know, what it means is helpful. Now here, this PDF, state statutes requiring SAC. Now this one here, see, I have a problem. That'll be fixed later on tonight, probably. Let me go over here. So it will be this page is what will come up. So this is in PDF, as you can see. And we start off with, this is what makes up SACs. And they are links. So it would actually bring you to the state website, these links to say 1008.345. So here you have how it was established. We go to the next page. It's 4 pages, so you could print off in 2 pages front and back. I always believe in minimal paper. And if it's, you know, 2 pages front and back, that's a good cheat sheet for looking for things of information. So the powers and duties of the school board, this is where they detail school improvement plans. state lotteries. This is on the expenditures of funds for public education with a school advisory council, as you can see.
This is incredible.
If you don't have a school improvement plan, this is where it says here. If you can see my highlight, no funds shall be released for any purpose from the Educational Enhancement Trust Fund to any school district in which one or more schools do not have an approved school improvement plan, or do not comply with the school advisory council membership composition requirements. So that has never been implemented as far as I know, but to me, it's like, you know, if they had just withheld the funds from the school, they probably would be implementing and responding more, but they put this, you know, that instead of using a fly swatter, they got this, you know, crane, you know, poking holes, and it's just not, the penalty is so great that it's just not going to be utilized. It hasn't been.
May I ask where would we report the violations for that? The Attorney General?
Attorney General and Auditor General. So I'll show you that here. So here's your recognition funds, and there's your sunshine laws. And then it goes into your definitions of school teachers, etc. And then these, the last page is different Attorney General's opinions on SAC members. So one was a fee for records provided to a SAC member.
Oh, that's interesting.
A lot. Now, if you have a SAC member that wanted documents, it's not to be, it doesn't have to be provided free, but it can't be outrageous either.
Okay, so on that note, I just saw today people were asking for records and they're quoting like $4,000. It's kind of insane what they're quoting. It's kind of a way for them to keep us from getting these things.
It could be, or perhaps you have to narrow what you're asking for. If you're asking for all records, then you might be getting, you know, records that will be thousands of pages, where you're really only looking for something narrow. So maybe you have to narrow your focus. By the same token, is there a way for you to go in and, you know, read it where you take a picture on your phone? I don't know. I'm not familiar on that level, but this will help you with some of the state statutes. So let me take you off here. And if we go to enforcement, so if something's wrong with your school improvement, with your SAC, and what is the oversight? It's the State School Board of Education. With that being said, there's not a whole lot that I've ever seen them do. I had the greatest, when I had problems with my SAC, several SACs, when I couldn't get answers from my district and my schools, I went to my representative, and they wrote a letter to the education commissioner, and things changed. I mean, sometimes like that day.
Wow.
And let me tell you, stuff rolls downhill. So just, you know, be prepared. You might not, you know, somebody may not be happy with what's occurring. You just have to be prepared for that. You want to be reasonable. You know, nobody wants unreasonable. We have to be prepared to, you know, make sure that we're treating others with respect and trying to understand the whole picture. I didn't always get, I always got my answers, but normally what I saw, sometimes I got the action, but I'm not sure it was worth the fallout. So we had in our school advisory council, they took money and bought laptops, and it never went before SAC. So they had to put the money back.
Oh, they do. So can we request as citizens an audit of the SAC funds, or would that be in the binder?
Can you do what?
Can we audit how the SAC's spending? Because it sounds like up to this point, not a lot of parents have really been involved with SAC. And how would we know up to this point that things haven't been kind of rogue?
You might be able to go back a year. I don't know how long, I don't know how that works. Because I've always, if I saw a problem, it was immediate. I never went back to what had occurred in the past because the money is given each year.
Okay, and then the last question is, we have an equity committee that has been put together in our school board. And these people are operating in complete like darkness. There's no real like disclosure as far as I know of what they're talking about. I know they're putting together a plan. I know that they're kind of going to be recruiting people based on that plan. And it sounds like a way that they're kind of pushing CRT in a softer way, undetected. Why is it that a committee that's put together by our board isn't required to operate under these SAC to the sunshine standards? It almost seems like it's their way to work around the sunshine standards.
I'm not sure on that one because when, for example, when our school board was talking about, I don't remember what the issue was, but they had workshops. Those workshops were sunshine. I got to go in and sit in and listen. Doesn't mean you could participate, but you could be there and listen. Sunshine law doesn't mean that everyone has a chance to, speak. And that's where your bylaws also help. Because your bylaws can have, if you've got a very active SAC or there's a lot of contention, then you have to go with Robert's rules so that you can keep things moving on and have the ability for many people to speak. So you might have 2 minutes per person. Because if you have one that, constantly comes back to it, well, then nobody else has any time. That's not fair. If your school board has made this committee, I would go and ask their school board attorney.
Okay. Well, we have an issue with him too.
I've done that before. And that's where I really have not participated with SAC. I did a couple meetings for my grandson's school, and then he moved. But after that one issue that I saw how they treated this person so bad, and it was funny because the SAC chair actually reached out to me and he said, she's doing this and she's doing this. And I said, well, let her. She wants to record the meeting. Ask her how you can help. She has every right to record the meeting. So stop. You're wasting your time. It's sunshine law. Figure out how best to help her. And, they made the situation worse. And after the response from my superintendent, he said, nobody ever checks. And he was right. And it was like, I got other things to move on to. And I pulled back from this particular SAC from our county. Just go back and just try to be as concise as you can with it. And if you're still not sure, go to your representative.
Okay.
Your local one. He might get a lot more action than you. Say, I've tried my best. I haven't got an answer. Is this committee under sunshine law? And I'm interested in it. I want to know when they're meeting so I can take a look. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, as far as the audits go, every district is audited. And for SAC, specifically for membership, they only pull a few. You've got, for our schools, see, St. Petersburg, Pinellas, I think we've got 167 schools, something like that. So for them to go through all of them, so normally they pull a handful and go through there. So you've got your under state statutes in SAC. This is where you're going to go. These are for the laws. where the school improvement funds, where the law comes from that, where it comes for the recognition, general appropriations, the auditor general, because again, how did I get information? I did a lot of research. Sunshine law frequently asked questions. That one's more me looking through the questions that I've received and answering them either through a memo or in other parts of the law to determine. As far as the auditor general, that's here. So I went through, and I haven't done it in a number of years. As you can see, the last time I did it was 2015. I went through the Auditor General report. So you go to the Auditor General's website, and you're actually going to go through each county by county by county. And they have 2 years usually on the website, and they've now divided it off where they have different, they call it different types of audit. So you might have to go through 5 or 6 or 7 in order to get the information that you're looking for. But for this one here, no, this was an actual memo. So let me go back. Combined report. So for this one here, I went through and these were the things I went through. So these are all hyperlinks. And you can see this was a number of years ago, how I did it. And this is how you would do it if you were looking for information. So if we went to, say, Wakula 2006 SAC membership, so the majority of that school on their SAC was school employed. So you're not going to get anything handed to you on a plate. You have to, it's that research going back through. Most of the things on this side here, when I have a question, I try to answer it through law. The SAC attracting members and discouraging members, that's from my SAC training. So the site was built a lot off that. When you get to the Department of Education, notice there's just a couple of drop downs because it's mostly district Department of Education. And then this side here is mostly when it concerns your Auditor General, Attorney General, Sunshine Law, and your statutes. Trying to make it so it was pretty easy to figure out. And, if you're wondering why people are not coming, well, go to the discouraging parent involvement, because I'll tell you what, this doesn't just mean parent involvement. I've seen this in so many different committees, not SAC, where, people, the first thing they'll say is, I was a founding member. This is the way we've been doing it since 2016. And it was like, well, I used to spank my kids, doesn't mean it's right now. We all have that. My parents are going, but they're flip-flopping. And I'm going, well, thank God they're flip-flopping. It means they're thinking, because we have the ability to change our minds. And that's a good thing. It's an open mind. So these are also things that might help. The whole idea is, if you get the parents in, how the parents and the community and the teachers too, and the staff members, if this is a very heavily heavy-handed administrative school, they're not going to want to speak up. Nobody wants to be a rubber stamp. And nobody wants to keep going to meetings when nothing is done. They have to have a purpose in it. And if you're looking at why you're not getting people to come in, that's where it's nice to have that diversity in your SAC. It was made because we usually have been having the same people, the same thinking. And if you have the same thinking, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. You need different thinking sometimes to address issues in your school. So if you've got a school with a higher amount of low income, they're going to have very different needs, where maybe if you want parents to be more involved, you know, you might be doing a SAC meeting along with a pizza party, and PTA could, you know, assist in that, and then you have someone there to help the kids with homework. You know, then it kind of hits a lot of different avenues. If you've got a school that has a lot of ESOL kids, you know, maybe you have to have pair them up with someone who can interpret and be like a SAC buddy, so that you have that communication. If you don't train your members, they're never going to know what to do, and they're never going to ask anything. Anyway, hopefully this has helped. You have
I just
a little
wanna-
bit of knowledge. Yeah.
I want to thank you. This is incredibly helpful. You're breaking through like this veil that I feel like so many parents are under. And I know Jennifer has a question. I'd love to hear it, but thank you for this training.
No problem.
I have a question, but I've also got a couple of comments. After the last Zoom meeting with the Moms of Liberty, that's where I kind of found out about the SAC. I immediately notified my principal that night. I sent an email saying, hey, I would like to be a part of the SAC at the school. You know, do you have a spot open? And I kind of went out there saying, you know, 51%, I understand it's supposed to be from parents or in community. Immediately the next morning, like 8:30 in the morning, she sends me an email, you know, saying I've been put on the committee. Her secretary sent me the meeting list, the dates of the meeting, said that I'll get a Zoom invite when it gets closer. So I went out and did some digging, and I found on the Sarasota County website, school site, that they have the about 2 years worth of data, and it's driven by school. And you can see who's on the SAC committee at each school for the last 2 years. It's got all the minutes for the last 2 years. There's also the SIP plan per school out there as well. I don't know how many years they have out there, but I did stumble upon that. But I did notice for the school that I am concerned about, which is Riverview High School, I noticed, because my big pet peeve with that school is it is an IB school, but they focus all their attention on the IB teachers and students. But we have a lot of ESE students, which my son is one of them. And they really don't take care of those students and their needs or the faculty's needs. It's all IB driven. And I happen to notice when I looked at the list of people that are on the SAC committee, the majority of the parents are IB parents. There were very few parents of an ESE, Origin, or just your rather general education students. They were all IB moms and dads on that committee. So that was one of the big things about me getting in here, because as Alexa can probably, you know, adhere to, I've been going to the board meetings since June, and ever since then, my big thing has been on ESC students and the fairness that we treat them the same way as we give them every opportunity that they deserve, just as much as an IB student or anybody else. So that information is out there, Alexis, in case you didn't know. I've been digging into it, kind of playing around. And the other, I think my one question is, and earlier you had stated, Teresa, that the meetings are supposed to be in person. Right now they're holding them via Zoom because they won't let any of us on school property because no visitors. So does that work okay with, you know, being all on Zoom and the forum?
I would assume so, because everything changed with COVID.
Okay.
And I think we're you know, working outside anything that we have ever looked at before. I mean, it's something changed within months. Right. You know, I literally got back from Canada. My daughter got married up in Canada. We got back and everything shut down like a week later, and we would still be up in Canada. I don't know where. I mean, in Calgary, someplace. It's cold and beautiful up there, but everything has changed. I would assume it's fine, because again, we're working. What I would be looking at that point is if the information, so the minutes of the meeting should be on the school site or district site so that everybody has a chance to look at them. Are you able to get onto the Zoom? Are they saying, yeah, here's the Zoom information? You call, say, I want to attend the meeting. You know, nothing hidden. It should be all open so that you have a chance to participate. And just because whether you are or you're not on SAC, should not be the determining factor. So when we were looking at balancing, what we ended up having to do, and many schools have to do this, is we had to scale back our SAC from 22 people to 11. Because once you start adding a lot of, whether it's a lot of teachers or staff, or even a lot of parents, then it's harder to make the balance with the other components of SAC membership. So it's a lot easier to get one, say, low-income parent than it is, you don't have that problem with IB. You just don't. And I don't know how to, it sounds, I don't want to, I know how it sounds and I don't know how to say it better. So I just have to be, honest. Schools that have a higher socioeconomic IB programs, yes, those parents participate more. That's why schools in poor neighborhoods, they have so much harder of a time because the parents can't participate. They may have trust issues. They could be working 2 or 3 jobs to support their families. The whole makeup of the family could be very different. And so that's where I say you have to look and think outside the box, because how can you, if you were attending to the needs of a school like that had a high socioeconomic or high ESOL, how are you going to be able to address and make sure you can have that look at the student achievement without looking at what the child comes from? And sometimes you have to address more than just the child. You might have to address more family, where, like I said, maybe if you provided food, they don't have to rush home, they can have their pizza, or they don't have to worry about homework. The kids can do homework where they go to a meeting. You have to think outside the box, and you want to listen to what they say, because something that they're going to say is going to be, I didn't think of that. And it'll be that aha that you can make things better. And you're right. Your child in ESE, they get extra dollars along with IB, because you're in both of them are specialties. So they get a higher ratio of dollars. And I'm not talking school improvement funds. I'm talking how the funds are, how they get them from the state or from the county. Each student might be worth 1.2, or I don't know how they did it. It was a number of years when I went to it. So there is extra dollars, and they should be driven towards your child. And with your school improvement funds, a lot of times the schools will not spend all their funds, so they roll over. And they can roll over. That is absolutely okay. But that's not the intent of the legislatures. Each child is given $5 or $10. It should be used for that child, not on, somebody from, 3 years down the line when you have this big chunk of money.
Right. I think my biggest pet peeve with Riverview is they have a PTO, but it's designated to IB only. And so I asked the principal, I'm like, well, what do we need to do to have a PTO for the whole school or the ESC? And she's like, oh, well, you got to go through all this. And she kind of made it a big deal. So I went to somebody at the landings and I says, hey, why do we have PTO like this? Just IB that just supports the IB at Riverview. And they're telling me that ain't supposed to happen. It's a PTO that supports all the children. at the school, not just a group. So we're trying to change that as well, because that's not fair, because the PTO at Riverview, they generate a lot of money and it all goes to the IB students and nothing, and teachers, and nothing goes to the ESE students or teachers at all. So the IB gets really padded between that and what the school's giving them in SAC. So those students and teachers are really flourishing with, they have an abundance of materials for them, while our ESC students and teachers have very little to work with. And the teachers are struggling just to find, I spent a lot of money of my own this year supporting the teachers, giving them, buying them the resources, the books and the stuff that they needed so that they could, have things for those students. And it's sad because this, we have a PTO that could be helping provide that. And it's like, nope, that PTO is only for IB students. We don't support the ESC students.
That kind of sounds like discrimination to me.
It is. And that's the big thing that I'm struggling with. That's why it was so important for me when I found out, my son's a senior, and I found out about the SAC and the meeting, a couple of weeks ago. It's the first I've heard of it in the 12 years that I've been in the school system. And so, I'm entering it at the very end of the, thing now. He's a senior, but, I'm going to try to get in there and try to make a difference, because, how they fund at Riverview and where they put their money, it's all driven to one side and the other side gets totally left out. I mean, to the point where, they buy all the stuff for the teachers, flood their boxes throughout the year. I spent, the first day of school, I was up till midnight creating 45 packets for ESE teachers and dropped off so that they could be put in the teacher's mailbox on the first day of school to show that they have support too. They walk into those buildings, they walk through their mailboxes, they see the IB teachers' mailboxes overflowing with gifts and goodies, and our ESE doesn't get anything. So, me and my husband, we took, a couple $100 that night, was up till midnight putting 45 packets together just so that our teachers could see appreciation. That kind of stuff is what our schools should be doing. Our PTOs, our SAC,
you're right, but here's the difference. SAC is different. PTA and PTO, they're not under sunshine. They are their own entity. You don't even have to have a PTA or a PTO at a school. Now, if you have after school activities, football, cheerleading, volleyball, whatever, that PTA or PTO is really necessary, because that's how the insurance is. When you, at the beginning of school, when you sign the form and you say you want your child to, attend whatever it is, or it's during the year, and you'll pay $6 for insurance for that year for that kid while they're in the activity. That's PTA, that's PTO. They're different. They are not under state statutes. They're not under school board. They are their own entity. So that's not much you can do there. As far as SAC, now your kid will be out of school next year. Doesn't mean that you stop. You can still continue, and you can maybe be as a community member. When my kids got grown, I continued as a SAC member, but when we had to downsize our SAC in order to make that makeup, because that's what the Audit General looks at. And that was the only way to make things work. So let's say you have 15 people on your SAC, okay? And you have a 50% free and reduced price lunch population at your school. And let's say all the kids, none of us fill that. None of our kids do. So I'm going to have to go out and find 5 or 6 parents or community members to bring in that socioeconomic portion to make it balanced, because I would need 50% of my SAC to match that, or within 10%. So 4 parents. So when you have too large of a SAC, if you have a diverse population, you're going to have a lot harder time to be able to achieve that balance. With that being said, you can go to every SAC meeting. You don't have to be a member. I wasn't a member for years.
And if I may, I want to thank you, Teresa, for all the time in this training. It's incredible, and we're going to use this to train a lot of different people. Jennifer, the reason you're on this call is I want to talk to you afterwards, but this is what we're going to be doing with Liberty Leaders. Liberty Leaders, our campus Liberty teams, will be encompassing SAC plus all the other things that are going on in this school, including the PTO. So that's kind of something I want to talk to you after this.
All right.
But I appreciate the work that you're doing and the fact that you took the information and you took action. Like, those are the kind of people we're looking for our committees to lead at each school, because you're going to set up a group that will outlive you and your son. You're going to set up a community group that's going to be able to get this thing back on track.
Are we good?
Yep.
So I have to go and fix that one link, and I have to fix the presentation for the Florida families so that you can get to the site. And I'll update that. It'll be done tomorrow, and I'll let Pamela know, and then she'll let you know, Alexis, so that you can get the material for continuing your training for other parents and community members. And Jennifer, don't give up hope. You're doing the right thing. And, you don't have to be. Sometimes it's a whole lot easier not to be a SAC member. I want you to think about this. You and I could be going to Riverview High School, attending the SAC, and then talking about it. Talking about upcoming things for vote. But if we're not SAC members, we're not violating sunshine law. Whew, isn't that nice? Because I think it's $500 and 5 days in jail.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. I forgot to tell you about the penalty part. Oops. There is a penalty for it. I don't know, most people, they get a slap on the wrist, and I don't know, because I know school boards get in trouble for violations every once in a while, but I haven't heard. Actually, they probably pay the $500 and go, whew, at least it's not thousands of dollars. Or, boy, $500 or 4 days in jail. Let's pay it.
I wish we could vote on it. I'd say send him 4 days in jail.
I'd be right there too.
But hopefully you can get the what you're looking for. It's through it's digging, and sometimes you have to just step back a little bit, think about it, and maybe circle the wagon and go in a different way. Okay, so you might not be able to see how SAC has spent their money through years, but you can look at it from the future now. And I try to put on the hat of how would I feel about it. There was a book. My daughter was bringing in straight A's, middle school, and she was doing 8 hours of homework a night. And I was like, this is too much. This is way too much. It's too much. I don't have time with her after school. So I got this book. It's called Teachers Effectiveness Training. And the hardcover book, the first part is teachers, second part is parents. And it went through steps on, homework, for example, what is reasonable. And I read through the book, and it had different things that I could do. And I went to the school. I had a meeting, and they brought in 9 teachers, all her teachers, and the principal came too. Yeah, I knew him from SAC, so he probably knew a troublemaker. No, I wasn't a troublemaker, and I thought, if I was less confident than what I am, how would I feel as a parent coming in and having 8 teachers and a principal to talk to me about my kid? You're not going to get that communication. You've effectively shut it down. But I used the book techniques, and it had things like, that must be a lot of work to, correct all that homework. Well, they weren't, because they were having the students grade each other's work and then call out the other student's grade, which is a no-no. That's an embarrassment. You don't do that. And I used all these techniques, and I left and I didn't get anything. But I came out going, well, they suck. I did everything right. But I used those techniques for the rest of my life in trying to put myself in the shoes. So if I was to come into Riverview and say, well, I want to go through all the records, I want to see how everything is spent for the last 4 years, you're initially, no matter who you're speaking to, they're going, oh gosh, we got a troublemaker here. So sometimes it's good to try to work within and, have
A good relationship.
Yeah. And you can say it's a manipulation, and I hate that word, because but it's trying to work for the benefit. The benefit is, your student, your family, or your school. And, I don't know of too many principals that put in gold faucets in their school. It may not be the best way. Some principals are difficult to work with, for sure. But anyway. I'm here if you ever need anything.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you for all that you're doing for students across Florida. We really appreciate your work.
No
Thank
problem.
you very much.
All right. You have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.